Hey guys, welcome to the Leporello sprint. In this first video, I'm going to get you started with this project by showing you how to make one of these. It's called a Leporello. It's a tiny sketchbook. Here's one that I just made. Here's another one that I made a few years ago, and I made with some friends. So, to make a Leporello, here's what you'll need. Metal ruler will be useful. Set square will be useful. Box cutter is essential. PVA glue is essential. And a pencil. That's about it. Oh, and you'll need an A3 pad. Preferably one with a piece of box board at the back. Now, this pad is cartridge paper. I don't recommend you get cartridge paper. I recommend you follow my instructions from the email that I sent out, which suggests that you get some nice heavy watercolor paper at 150 GSM or above. For this demo, I'm just going to use this one though. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is turn our sketch pad over and work on the box box board side. What we're going to do is we're going to cut out some 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter squares of box board. So I'm going to use my set square here and my pencil, which has been sharpened pretty well. This is not an exact science, guys, so don't stress too much about getting it right. If you're a bit of a perfectionist or a control freak, you might want to be more fastidious than I am. But most people aren't like that. I'm just going to do a relatively quick and dirty version of the sketchbook build. You can be as fussy as you like. I don't recommend you be any sloppier than I am, though. Okay, so what I've done is I've measured an area that's 10 centimeters, 100 millimeters by 200 millimeters, and just gonna check that it's square, and then I'm gonna draw another line at 10. I'm gonna measure that at the bottom as well. Okay, so these are going to be the end pieces for our Leporello. So the next step is to get your box cutter and cut those out. Okay. So we've got our two pieces of box board. I'll just do a quick measure test. Yeah, they're pretty accurate. Not too bad. And that one's a bit long on that side. And that one's a bit short on that side. Well, that's okay. We need our objects to be friendly rather than precise. Okay, so just here's a piece of paper. So our A3 sheet. So I want you to tear a sheet out of the same sketchbook that you that you've got your box board from, and so this A3 sheet is 420 millimeters long and it's 297 millimeters wide. So our goal is to create 3 strips that are going to fit with our 10 by 10 squares. So what we need is like 10 millimeters, 100 millimeters high, and 400 millimeters long. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 20 millimeters off the end. Get rid of that. Just keep that, and we're gonna split the thing into 3 sections, and they're gonna be 99 millimeters because we're 3 millimeters short of 300 millimeters. That's a bunch of number gibberish. Let's go step by step through it. Let's get a couple of pages from our sketchbook. Okay, step number 1. Let's take 20 mils off the end here. Easy as pie. We'll need those little extra tabs later, so don't cut them off, whatever you do. And then we're going to split this this short edge into 3. So it's 297 millimeters. 297 divided by 3 is 99. So we're just going to do 99 from one end, 99 from the other end, and then we'll just check. Yep, we're about 99 in the middle there. Okay, do the same from this side. $99. Look, this isn't an exact science, and I don't have a long ruler, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my set square to draw a square line up this way. If you don't have a set square, that's fine. You can just kind of muddle your way through this. This is just because my ruler's not quite long enough to get all the way across that 400 millimeter gulf. Okay, so we just want to do some nice straight lines all the way from the length of the thing to one length of the thing to the other. Okie dokie blokey. Now we're going to get our box cutter and just give it a chop. If you want to skip the drawing lines and just go courageously into the box cutter, you're more than welcome to give that a go. You might have to, if you mess it up, it's okay. You've only messed up one piece of paper. You can have another go. Okay. Be as accurate as you can, but if you can't, that's okay, because there is a. Oh, that actually worked. There's a way we can get them to line up all properly later. We'll do a trim at the final end of the thing, which is one of the great tricks of bookbinding. Okay, so we've got our 3 strips. We've got our 2 box boards. Now, I did have an eraser here at some point. Where did it go? Here it is. So if you've got dirty hands, or you might have to constantly be kind of doing a little bit of erasing. One of the reasons we buy good paper is because it allows us the luxury of erasing. That's one of the cheap nasty paper is often much less forgiving when you make a mistake. Okay. Next step is to do the accordion fold. So I've set up a workflow, guys. You don't have to do it in this order, but for me, because I'm a bit of a grub, I like to do all of my folding before I do any glue business, because the glue makes my hands sticky, which makes my hands filthy, which means when I get to the folding stage, I get muck all over my beautiful expensive paper. So what I'm going to do is take the box board. I'm just going to use this as a rough template. So this piece this is about 420 millimeters long. So there's 20 mil at the end. That's that we have to use as a tab to connect our strips of the Leporello. Simple as that. Great. Yep, that works out okay. So what we can then do, I like to do a nice clean fold this way by putting my ruler down, getting a piece of cardboard underneath and giving it a shimmy. One of the people who are really good at bookbinding are really good at getting a nice sharp fold with as little mucking around as possible. It's a fine skill. Okay, so once you've done the fold, you should have a... Just remember the next step is to take it from the tab end and fold it back on itself. It doesn't fold into itself. It folds back on itself. So 2 of those folds you'll need to reverse. Okay, give them a good crease. Again, I try not to do any creasing with my actual fingers because I'm such a grub. Doesn't have to be perfect. What you find with bookbinding is that, you know, sometimes the imperfection creates friendliness. So there's a bit of uneven on this edge, but that's okay. We're just going to trim that off once we've got it all glued together. Okay, so that's one of 3. Just gonna make sure they're all even in the area where the fold is, where possible. And so we're going to do 3 of those. Right, so we've got our three parts of the concertina. What we might do is get those glued up first. Tell you what I like to do. We're just using PVA glue. I do recommend that you use either PVA glue or some spray adhesive like this. I actually think that PVA glue, if you use it properly, probably ends up being less messy. But it has it causes a little bit of trouble because it's got water in it, and the water makes the paper expand and shrink. So you kind of have to plan for you have to trust that when the paper expands that it's going to shrink later. This stuff is great if you're outdoors and you've got an appropriate workspace for it. If you want to use glue like this, it might work, or you might end up in trouble. It's tough. I do recommend that if you're serious about being an artist and, you know, building things and having a well kitted out studio, that you go out and get yourself some PVA glue. Most households will probably have it in their back shed. Okay. So when I'm working with PVA, I like to get a spare bit of cardboard and use it. I use one to apply the PVA with one of the straight edges, and I use another one just to have a bit of just to put my glue on. If you were getting really serious, if you really want to be like fussy and in control of this, you might want to go get a takeaway container or a piece of plastic. Put your glue in, then water it down, and then get a brush that you don't mind destroying and use the brush to apply the glue. But you know, that's up to you. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of nest these. We're gonna nest these concertina elements inside each other. So what you're basically doing is you're taking the end that doesn't have the flap, and you're sticking it to the end that does have the flap. It's as simple as that. And you're sort of nesting the end inside that flap. That's pretty easy. Go. I'm going to get my glue. Don't want too much on there. So I like this sort of cardboard method because it allows you to spread the glue really thinly and spread it evenly across the surface, and that really prevents you from getting too many wrinkles and bubbles. Okay, just going to slide that in there. Now if you do this carefully, you can kind of bounce it on the table and line up one of the sides, and that's going to be useful because if we have one side that's lined up, then we can trim the other side. So bouncing it on the table, making sure the folds are all lined up. Yep, that was pretty easy. Do that same thing again. Sometimes less is more with PVA glue. Inevitably, you'll get the pages sort of sticking together at some point, but you'll figure it out. Okay, again, I'm gonna fold that over, fold it all together. Make sure my now, if you've been careful and you've done a good job, you should have a pretty nice, clean, flush line of folds there. If you've been a bit sloppy or you haven't really been paying attention, maybe things will be all warped and out of control. If that's the case, you know, you've only really wasted one sheet of paper, so you know, it might be worthwhile having another run at it. Okay, so once you've done that, you should have one side that's quite flush and another edge that's all sort of raggedy. What we'll do is we'll let that dry, and then later we'll come and trim that raggedy edge. So let's put that aside for now. Well, the next step is to take our box board and cover it. As you can see in the two examples I've made earlier, this one's covered with some cloth, some fabric. You're more than welcome to do that if you like. This one is covered with just some pages from one of my comics. So I'll do another one of those. Now, you could use whatever you like. If you want, you can get some of your watercolor paper and do some experimental mark making. You could just do one solid block of color. Ultimately, you can put anything you like on the cover of your Leporello. And look, if you feel like you're in a pinch and you don't know what to put on there, you could potentially even leave this task until later. So you don't necessarily have to cover it right now. I like to cover it right now because I like for some reason it sets the tone for the sketchbook. So and you can always glue things onto it later as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this comic that I drew. Crappy little floppy comic drawn. I love this. I'm very proud of this landscape page. So I'm going to tear that out. Don't worry, it only cost me a couple of bucks per copy to print, and I've got fucking thousands of them. Boxes and boxes and boxes. So it's not a thing. Don't worry, it's not a thing. Here's what I might do. Might flip this over. So again, this isn't a very exacting This isn't a very exacting science. Gonna get my paper. So you want about, my guess is on a 10 centimeter Leporello, you want about minimum of 2, maximum of 4 centimeters of overlap time. So this is very much like, you know, you guys all went to school. I imagine you had to wrap your school books in contact. Is that even a thing? Same process. Honestly, I don't know if that's a thing anymore. So we've got a nice big square there. And kind of what you want to do then is sort of to chop out a shape kind of like that. You can mark it if you like, or you can just wing it. Most of the time I just wing it. You don't want to go all the way to the corner. You don't want the box board poking through. You want a little bit of overlap. Let's say some, maybe 2 or 3 mils out from the corner. And you can sort of pat that down at the end. Okay. There we go. So what you end up having is a strange cross shape. Now, if you're going to muff this up, it's going to happen at this stage. So we're going to get some more glue out. So especially if I'm sort of gluing this sort of it's like newsprint, so it's very absorbent. It's super cheap. It's not designed for this. So I'm in danger of the paper wrinkling and getting this sort of tacky sort of wrinkly feeling from the glue. So it's really, really important that you spread the glue thinly and evenly across the box board. So you can watch watch the way I'm using this other piece of cardboard to do it. Look, if you're really serious about bookbinding, I believe there's actually a special kind of glue called bookbinding glue that is more alcohol based and doesn't have that quality of wrinkling paper. But I am a DIY guy, and I like creative processes that require zero special equipment. So just gonna, if there are any bubbles on the backside, you want to squeeze those out now. You can see some already getting some newsprint on my fingers. And then what I'm going to do is sort of like just tap a bit of glue into those corners there. And then go around the edges. And fold them over. So that I don't get glue everywhere, one of the techniques I use with these is I usually let it sort of dog ear a little bit here, so if you can sort of see it's not stuck all the way to the edge. I kind of wait for it to dry, and then I kind of revisit it, because if you try and you can never quite get all that glue in there, and if you try and do it at the first go round, you end up with glue everywhere. And then you end up with stickiness, and then you end up with a general mess. Okay. Let's see how that is. Oop. Okay, so at the moment, I'm not sure if you can see on the video, but the paper has absorbed some of the water from the glue, and it started to wrinkle up. I'm very, very confident that as it dries out, it'll shrink, and then we'll have a nice smooth cover. But what I might do while I'm waiting, you guys don't have to do this. I'm just doing it because I've got I'm working with newsprint, and it's kind of coming off on my fingers. I'm going to spray some workable fixative on it. This is something that you would spray on a drawing, a charcoal drawing or something, to stop the charcoal from coming off. So yeah, this is a non-essential part of the process. Makes the paper go see-through. Again, I trust that it's gonna dry. Okay. Now, I don't think I picked the right part of the page to put on there. Boring. We are done. Here are my two my two covers. They're sort of they're drying at the moment, so I might have to have a little break before we finish that off. They need a little bit of cleaning up, but I'll wait for them to dry. Okay, while I'm waiting, what we might do is just trim the raggedy edges of this. There should be an extra little tab that you'll need to trim. So the last tab, which didn't get glued, you can just squip that off. Squip. That is a word. I may have invented it, but you should take note. Squipping is a verb. And you've just seen a squip demonstrated. Very promptly and cleanly, because that is how a good squip should be. Okay. Okay, so as you can see, it's fairly obvious where we are now. We've got the innards of our Leporello. One edge is a bit tidy, the other edge is raggedy. So what I'm going to do is just get my metal ruler. And look, again, I'm just eyeballing this. You can be as fussy as you like, but you shouldn't be any sloppier than I. Ha! Okay, I'm going to have a little break now while we wait for our covers to dry, but here they are. Here are the fixins of our Leporello. Which one do you think should be on the cover? Definitely this one. Well, as you can see, suddenly the assets I'm working with has changed. That's because I lost the last 3 minutes of footage that I recorded from our thing, and what you're seeing on the screen is backup footage that I made in preparation. Thank goodness for that. So this is the final stage where I'm just applying some glue to the back page of the accordion interiors, smoothing it out as evenly as possible with that piece of cardboard. Really, if you've got big beads of glue, that's really something to get a bit concerned about. You want to try and avoid bubbles and too much wrinkling. And then it's as simple as very carefully sort of placing the cover on top of that accordion and trying to get it all to line up nicely. So that's one side. Relatively easy. Got glue on the cardboard, so just spread it evenly across the other side. A little bit extra. Little bit extra. Both sides are done. Now there's a little bit of sort of shuffling around you can do before the glue fully sets. Just making sure, kind of squeezing it, putting it all together, tapping it on the table. Those kind of things will help you sort of line up all the elements. But there you have it. You might have a page or two that's stuck together. You might have some lines in there that need erasing. You might have a few sort of sawtooth edges that you could trim with a razor blade. But generally, that's our Leporello done. See you guys in class.